Welcome to Culinary Science, Outline 2. This is Chef Jack, and hopefully you're getting the hang of this now. And this is the PowerPoint that's in Module 2. And after you've done the reading, you can start the complete outline and then submit it and take the quiz. So hopefully my skills at making videos will start to improve and will be entertaining and also informative. So let's get going. So after the session, you'll be able to identify the 4 basic food groups, how they react with each other, and how heat affects them. The 4 basic molecules, and this is coming from the McGee book. I know we're not always going to be using this book, but the first part will be from the McGee, and then the second will be from the Gislin. And I'll just kind of show you the detail that McGee goes into. So they're chemical protagonists. We don't really think of it that way, but chemicals react with one another, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a not so good way. So we've got waters, fats, and water is kind of an antagonist. So if you think of it, when you add a vinegar and water, so if you think about it, if you add water to an oil, they separate, naturally like one another. Carbohydrates generally mix well with water, and generally if you're going to add a thickener like a slurry, use water to mix with your cornstarch. Or proteins are sensitive to heat. If you overcook a chicken or an egg, it gets dry, tough. Some little tidbits about water. Familiar chemical companion we have. It's the smallest. It shapes continents, climate, and all life, including our own. Everything exists with some type of water solution. Our bodies are 60% by weight water. Raw meats are 75%. Fruits and vegetables can be 95% water. And we cook in it. And of course, we use it for cleaning. Water is good at dissolving other substances. So it's good for cleaning, and or it's a great ingredient when we make stocks, because it helps extract the flavors and nutrients and other components from the bones and sinew. Precision cooking, I won't play this video, but it's in here. It's a sous vide cooking. Sous vide is a very accurate type of cooking, usually in a water bath. And they cook eggs at 143 degrees and 144 Fahrenheit. And you can see the difference of just how 1 degree can change the whites and the yolks. And they cook it from 15 minutes to an hour. And again, this is, if you do go onto the video, you can go to this 1 hour and 28 minute mark and watch it. It's really an interesting video. Liquid water is slow to heat up. The amount of heat needed to raise its temperature by the given amount. So it's, water in some ways is really good for that, because our bodies are made up of 60% water. So water really helps keep our body temperature constant. 10 times the amount of energy to heat an ounce of water as an ounce of iron. Heat thus allows water to absorb a lot of heat before temperature rises. So it takes on a lot of heat BTUs before it changes from 52 degrees to 53 degrees, which again, that helps maintain our bodies. The ocean, it helps keeps the ocean at somewhat stable temperatures. And oil will heat up twice as fast as water, and conversely, it'll cool down quicker. So that's why, if a pot of water takes just a long time, and that's just the chemical nature of water, which is good. And water properties, ice and cells. So ice damages cells. As ice is formed, it expands and becomes less dense, and that's why it floats. If you've ever left a beer in the freezer or a soda, what happens. The can explodes. And then when you thaw that item, like a piece of fruit or meat, then the juice from the thawed vegetables leaches out and is left on a plate. And that's why sometimes you can tell if something's been left in the freezer a long time, if a lot of that juice is on the plate when you're done thawing it. That's all the juices from inside that food product. There's a term called IQF, individually quick frozen. So a lot of food manufacturers will use a process where they freeze items very quickly. So they'll put, instead of just putting it in a freezer at 10 degrees, they'll put it in a blast freezer which circulates the air. It kind of creates convection currents, and then they'll bring it down to 0, -10, -20 degrees. And that's a better product. You'll pay a little bit more for it, but when something's listed as IQF, it's a better quality. Over time, ice crystals tend to migrate towards one another. And that's why, so if you think of it, they're like those little diamonds in the piece of meat or vegetable. Over time, they want to reconnect with their buddies, kind of like we all do. um, and actually, in the frozen food, the crystals will migrate towards one another. But as they do that, they're rupturing the cells as they kind of go through them. Fluctuations in the freezer encourages ice crystal migration and growth. So that's why it's better. Most commercial freezers are 0, -10, -20 degrees because they prevent the crystals from moving around as much and growing. That's why home freezers, at only 20 degrees, 15 degrees, and a lot of home freezers will go through defrost cycles, so the temperature is not always conducive for optimum freezing. That's why you pay a little bit more for commercial freezers. And here's just kind of example. So as the ice crystals grow and move over time, they fracture the cell, and then when you thaw it, the cell deflates, and then there's all your flavor. What kind of fish is this? Tuna. You wouldn't think of it, but the ships go out to sea, and they catch the fish, and then they'll gut them, take the head off sometimes they'll leave the head on, and then they blast freeze them to -40 degrees out at sea, and then they keep on fishing. It's tuna like this is used for sushi. They'll blast freeze it. One fish can sell for thousands of dollars, and I don't know, recently I've seen some of the tunas have been going for over $1 million for one sushi grade fish. And this was interesting in the McGee book, and I just thought I'd mention it. Liquid water absorbs a lot of heat as it vaporizes into steam. And if you ever made like a custard or a creme brulee, you put it in a water bath at typically 350 degrees. And then what McGee did is he used a different container to cook the little porcelain cups in. He used a cast iron roasting pan, a glass one, stainless steel, and then he covered one. And you could see just by, even though they're all in a 350 degree oven, the temperature of the water was different. So in the cast iron glass, and you need about 185 degrees for the custard to set. Where stainless steel, which we've talked about before, is a poor conductor of heat, the water only got up to 180 degrees. And if you cover it, which you don't want to do, then you boil it, but then your custard will break. And so that's just some of the detail that McGee goes into, really drilling down into some of the specific facts and details of cooking. And depending on what you're using, and I've had that where I'll be in one kitchen and everything works perfect, and then you go to a different kitchen and you try recreating it and it just doesn't work. Well, it could be the oven, it could be the type of utensils that they have in that kitchen, the calibration of the ovens, a lot of things. Water and acidity. We don't talk a lot about acidity, but you've got human gastric juice is 1.3 pH, lemon juice, orange juice, vinegar, coffee, milk, and then you start getting into more basic, egg white, baking soda and water, and then ammonia is very. And then if you mix ammonia with bleach, you get chlorine gas, which is not good. But here's, we don't always think about pH, but how these foods interact with one another has a lot to do with pH. Baking soda, when you introduce it to vinegar, creates your volcano. But then that's the same leavening agent that we use in a lot of quick breads. baking soda or baking powder, mix it with some type of acid. And your acid could be yogurt, could be buttermilk, could be molasses is pretty acidic. There's other things. So keep in mind that the acidity of things can interact and change food. Vinegar and acidity. So then naturally we go from acidity to vinegar. We use vinegar a lot in cooking, for not only flavor, but its astringency or the tartness. And a lot of times, cooks or students will come up to me and say, "Chef, this sauce or this vinaigrette or whatever is kind of flat." A lot of times if you add some type of acid, could be lemon juice, orange juice, a little bit of vinegar, it kind of brightens up the dish. So that's just something to keep in mind. If something seems just a little flat, is there an acid enhance that flavor? Depending on the vinegar, you could use red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar, rice wine vinegar. So you not only are introducing the acidity, but you're also introducing a complementary flavor. Then vinegar is alcohol's fate. So once you make some type of alcoholic fermentation, the alcohol will go plus bacteria will turn into acetic acid. So that's why a lot of wines, they'll say go bad or go off. They're no longer wines, but they become great vinegar. So you could have, and that's how you get red wine vinegars, comes from red wine, white wine. And then again, I'm just bringing this up about the McGee book. He talks about vinegar for about 6 pages. Again, it just really goes into depth. And there's different types of vinegar. He goes through the Orleans process, where it's wine, barrels. A mother, think of that almost like a bacteria mold combination, where it rests on the surface of the wine and then it interacts with the air, and over time it turns the wine into vinegar. And that really produces the best flavor. And if you've ever had vinegar where you've got bits and pieces floating around in it, that's the mother. It's fine to eat. And especially if you get apple cider vinegar, Bragg's is one brand that I use a lot. You can tell there's bits of mother in there, and you can tell it was produced naturally. Whereas, and this would be something you could talk about for one of your papers, the industrialization of vinegar used to take months or longer, and some balsamic vinegars will go for years, and that's why it's so expensive. But now they also will streamline it, and they can make vinegar, in 2 to 3 days. But the flavor, the intensity, the coloring is not the same. So hopefully the next time you pick up a bottle of vinegar, you'll think twice. Is this an old world vinegar or a new world? Anyways, I think this is a great place to stop and take a break. Check your email, check your texts, because I know you've all have put away your phones for the last 13 minutes. Anyways, that's it for now. Thank you.